welcome to a special testimony podcast that we're doing today. I'm here with my friend Lisa, and Lisa is going to share with us a story of how she's made the decision to be baptized. And this is a very personal story, and it takes a lot of courage to tell that story, Lisa. So tell me about your childhood and how you grew up and how you started thinking about faith.
Well, my dad was in the military when I was growing up, and I was born in California, but we left early when I was 3 years old, and we moved to the Philippines, and he was stationed there. And so with my dad, it's very interesting because him being in the military, he's just like, doesn't stop. Like, he just wanted to do things that were just harder, like not harder, just more. He was like investing. He was in his 40s, and I hear that the 40s are like the best years. So he owned companies throughout Asia, like for computers, and he saw that niche and he saw the gaming niche. So he involved himself in that. And he also had places where he did concerts and things like that. So with him on weekends, somebody had to watch me. So every weekend I would most likely be on a plane traveling to Hong Kong or some part of Asia, Okinawa, and special places, Thailand. So it's just like it jumps at, let's go here. And so like during those times I experienced many different cultures and I accepted them. And just like in the Philippines, you had to learn their culture in school. Like you had to grow up and learn their language and learn how they do things in their government. Same with everywhere else I went. I had to obey the laws, even though I was a kid. And I was like, am I really going to go to jail? Like,
maybe.
I'm chewing gum. I think that's in Singapore. And they're like, no. And Thailand is like the Buddha. And I'd walk by some guys, and my mom would like yank me by the head. And I'm like, I just don't understand the rule part, but I'm just going to embrace it because we all have to just like go along with life. And this is how my life was going to be. Not that I knew that, but that's how everything planned it out until I was 9 years old. So I'm used to a lot of natural disasters already. And I'm used to poverty. So as in like going to Thailand, my mom, where she lived, was like, to me, it was enriching to know how those people lived and how they loved each other and still just like honed in on the small things, even though they were living with barely any. I think they still got the water from the well, and their toilets were in the floor, like the outbacks.
So materially, they were what we would view as in the United States as poor, but like relationally, they were rich.
Yeah.
They took care of each other. They had meaningful relationships. Their community was their big value. I mean, that's a big deal. That would definitely impact the way you saw the world. So did you ever go to church in this time or?
So they would bring me to different churches, depending on what the culture was like. But when we'd visit America a lot.
Yeah.
Not like a lot, but just like every Christmas or a holiday. And they would take me to church, and they went to Catholic church. Yeah. So we would go, and they didn't take me often. So like, we would often go when there was a funeral or a baptism. Yeah. And I started to like feel uncomfortable because it just felt like so like strict, and I just wasn't used to that strictness. Okay. And I was like, is this church? Like, I thought like United States was like the Church of the United States. Nobody like separated that from like Catholic or like Christian. And so I remember being in a pew, and I was getting up to use the restroom, and my dad pulled me back, and he said, you have to say this prayer before, or whatever it was, to leave the pew. And I was like, that is like ridiculous. Like, I can't even hear you. It's like, it was like loud when that was happening. And I was like, okay, and he goes, I'll pray with you. And he kneeled down, he prayed with me, and I left. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to go back to the pew. I wonder if I have to pray again to get back into the pew. And I was like, okay, he's going to guide me anyway. That's my father. He's going to let me get in. He told me how to do it, and I did it. So that's all I really had experience with the Catholic Church. My dad would speak to me about God and how God loves us and Jesus Christ saved us.
Oh,
and
wow.
during school in the Philippines, I learned little bits. And it's kind of funny because looking back, I learned it through like books, like children's books, mostly that were given to me. And I'm like, that is why people should be good because of that reason. And, you know, oh, they didn't mean to be good because it would say it in the children's books. So that was like my guidance into like the world and how they acted. Because my life was pretty like not normal because as far as having like a home, even though there was a home, it was a lot of things. I had like a maid growing up. Not that that's a rich thing to have in the Philippines, but usually people had maids. So I was like taken care of by a maid all week. And I saw my parents on weekends, but they were like growing. Like I was so happy for them. Yeah. Like I don't think it's abandonment or anything like that because they were taking care of me. Yeah, amazing things. And I would probably, I don't know if I'd do the same, but I probably would if like I was knowing that I was supporting my family and for the later, you know, that they're supported and that's the goals. So I didn't know what I wanted to be. So like it as in a religion, because my parents kind of told me I wasn't baptized. And there's the moment at Catholic Church where everybody got the baptism,
first communion, and all those things.
And they said, you can't go. And I was like, what?
Can't do it. Sorry.
Like, I was like, I'm like the outcast. Like, everybody's going to go, and I'm going to sit here like.
Because you weren't baptized.
And
so,
like, when I found out I wasn't baptized.
So, what did you always want to be baptized, or?
I was really shy.
Yeah.
So, I was only used to the baptism that happened in the Catholic Church. And I was like, those are babies.
Yeah.
Like, that's not an adult.
I was baptized as a baby, in the Methodist Church. Like I know what you're talking about, Never had to go up there, It's such a strange thing to think about. I was
like, well, why didn't you baptize me as a baby? I'm sure I've asked them, but that's definitely what I was thinking. Like, I would have just been baptized because then I started hearing like you had to be baptized in order to go to heaven or whatever society or people would just tell me along the way.
See, even though that's not in Scripture.
Yeah.
Jesus says, anyone who believes in me, but baptism is something that we do to make a decision. So I wonder, what is it that drew you to this place where you wanted to be baptized?
Well, I was 39 years old and sorry.
It's okay.
And I got really sick.
Yeah.
Like really fast. I didn't know like what was happening to my body. And I didn't know that I was that sick. So, because I still had like, I felt strong inside. Like, I can overcome this sickness, whatever it was. Yeah. But it got worse, like really bad. And like my color started changing. And that was like, you have to go to the doctor. You have to go to the ER. And when I got there, they took tests and I was just laying on the bed thinking they're going to come back and just tell me like, we're going to possibly have surgery or maybe I had to be in the hospital for a while. And hopefully a change in my diet, and she came in and she said, the good news is that Shane's Hospital in Gainesville answered and they are ready for you. And I was like, what? Like, what does that mean? What's Shands? I know it's a hospital, but why Shands? Like, do I have a choice in this matter of like what hospital I go to? And I didn't know anything about Shands, but come to find out, it's like amazing hospital, top number one. And for some reason, it was between Birmingham and Shands.
Both very good hospitals.
Yeah. And other people I've heard, like, theirs are different. I don't know. That doesn't really matter. But I always think about that, like, how that happened, like, spiritually.
Yeah.
So the second part was, the bad news is that your liver is failing as we speak. And it's like, I don't feel like my liver is failing. But the thing is that your liver doesn't hurt. But it should make you, like, really weak when it's dying. So I don't know, but it was like denial strength or something. Yeah. But I was like, no.
My liver's fine.
My liver's fine. They're just going to tell me, you know, something. They're going to inject me, give me some medications, and everything's going to be fine. So I was like, I got picked up. And I was driven, which was weird, driven to the Destin airport. And I was put on a jet, and they flew me to Gainesville. And by the time I got to Gainesville, like, I started to feel, like, weaker. Like, I couldn't move as much as I thought. And when I got off the plane, he goes, "Can you walk off the plane?" And I was like, I can't. Like, someone's going to have to grab, when I fall, be ready to, like, catch me. And these were older guys. And I was like, I mean, you're just going to have some strength, because I don't know who else. I'm not seeing anybody else that's getting me on this stretcher to get me to the hospital. And to my knowledge, I'm just, like, dying, you know, and not dying at the same time. Because
You're just refusing.
Yeah. And so I get there, and it's like chaos. They're waiting for me. All these doctors are around me, asking me all these questions, telling me to do all these things. They're operating, taking blood tests and all this stuff. And I was like, how am I supposed to pay attention to anything that's going on? Like, everybody's screaming at me, and I don't know. They got enough for me to get through the night, but I don't remember much from that night. So I woke up the next day, and it was either the next day or the following day, but I woke up in a room, and I did have somebody with me. So it's like a 2-bedroom, and I had a slew of doctors. Every doctor you can think of, like, came through my rooms. Like, I had several GI doctors, and I remember there was, like, liver doctors, there's kidney doctors, heart doctors, every organ endocrinologist. Like, I couldn't believe that these were, like, my doctors that were going to analyze me and about to tell me, like,
hey, here's what we're going to do.
Yeah. So it's like the biggest adversity I've faced. They came and told me that I had a MELD score 54. And I don't know if anybody knows much about the liver, but that means, like, your liver's basically dying. And the doctor's never seen a number that high. And
it's not the record you're trying to set.
No. And that number that high, it also meant that I could not get a liver transplant. And the only way for survival, like, was to get a liver transplant. So I kind of like, well, what's going to happen? Like, how are we going to make this happen? And the doubts in their faces, and I felt for them because they're doctors and they go by numbers. They do not know the spirit inside of me. It's like positive, and it's been positive since I can remember. And I was like, no, and I started making jokes, and that got me in trouble. And he, like, did not want to talk to me. I had, like, a social worker come to me, and she's like, you're going to have to calm down on your jokes, because there's so many rules that are implemented, and you, like, kind of have to care. And I was like, those are my coping skills. I didn't know that those were my coping skills. But
I'm definitely a person who tells jokes when things get stressful. I get it. That is how I cope with stress. The staff kind of hates it.
I think it's great because if that's your outlet, like you should use that. So I had to like put a mask on sometimes, but sometimes I knew a doctor could be okay with it. Yeah. So I was like, I do care. Who thinks I don't care? Like, I want to live.
Yeah.
And, I was tested for many things, including my psychology, and so many tests. Like,
when did it start to turn around? From all the poking and prodding and
they sent me home a couple times because I couldn't get one. They gave me a MELD score of 54.
Yeah.
And they said that you weren't going to live without getting a transplant. And they said you have 0% chance of survival rate and 90% chance of mortality within the next 6 months. And the rule of thumb for them was that I had to stay at home and get well in order for me to be considered to be on a transplant list. So they talked about hospice and just survival rates and like why I wasn't in a coma. I should be in a coma. And I was like, I don't want to be in a coma. And I was still telling myself, I do not feel this sick. I don't know where they're getting these numbers from. So I started like being numb to all these numbers. And I started hearing 3% chance of living, 3% chance in weeks or days, because my portal vein that connects my heart to my liver was like, started getting scarred where so that could have closed up any moment.
Yeah.
They had no control over that. They could do the best they could. And so every other person had to realize the scientific numbers of it or the survival rate. And I just lived by faith because I was like, there's no way that life could end just like that. And so one time I came back to the hospital because they just wanted to 5 hours away. It was really kind of hard too because I started really being in pain and bloating up and and I was like, oh, this is so hard. When are they gonna accept me? When is my numbers gonna get lower? And I just strived every day to eat better, just to cut out everything they told me to. And one night it was the same numbers again. And I was like, I'm just, God, what do I do? Everybody's crying. Nobody's, I can't handle the sadness.
Yeah.
I couldn't. And I was like, I wish people would stop crying because if I do pass, I don't want to feel guilty. I don't know why I felt guilty. It's I don't want to see people crying over me.
Yeah.
And I knew that people had pain, so I had to be graceful with it.
Yeah.
It was I knew I had to give him grace. And so one night, I was praying, I was talking to God, and he came and he spoke, or I don't know how you say it, but
he communicated with you.
He communicated with me, and I felt him. I felt his presence, and it's very powerful. And I felt him touch my arm, and he said, "Everything's gonna be okay." And I was like, that was real. Because I don't know how people discern voices, but that was clearly not my voice in my head. Because I was not telling myself I was going to be okay. Oh. I was prepared to almost actually believe these doctors. So I had that. And there's twice he told me through the in and outs of the hospital. And those were times when these doctors were really trying to convince me to do a bucket list. Granted, I understood that numbers to them
tell a story.
And I still believed in miracles. So I didn't argue. I just gave it grace, and I still had faith. And I went home, and everybody just didn't really tell me like things that they felt, and that was great, kind of, because I was like, yeah, like so happy every day. And my dad's like, I don't know what's wrong with her, but she's supposed to be like really sick. And I was like, no, because I'm gonna make it. And I wanted to be happy. There was no way, even if I died, I was gonna die unhappy.
Amen.
So I went back, and it was just for the start of the journey of the transplant. So the first time you go, it's like you have to go through all these tests and go through classes. And my last class was, or appointment, sorry. Some felt like classes, but my last
learning a lot there.
Yeah. So my last appointment was with Dr. Ash, and he was amazing. He's like an angel to me because he took a leap of faith. I mean, those doctors, not a lot of them were like, not particularly on my side, but they were like, it felt like they weren't on my side.
Yeah.
Like, because how can you deal with somebody this sick with numbers unbelievable, so low? Like, they have to be like factual about with their numbers. And so I had to give him grace more than I couldn't believe God. God had to give me the grace to give the way I felt like I was treated and stuff like that. But, you know, I've now learned that I do not particularly, I didn't have a choice in doctors, but I don't choose doctors based on their bedside manner anymore because they're still doing good. And doctors are good communicators. So there's a lot of learning there. Yeah. So Dr. Ash kind of just said, we're going to take you in and we're going to get you a liver. And it's not a promise that I would survive or anything like that. Yeah. But it was like,
we're going to try.
We're going to do this. And we're going to put you in ICU to finish up your tests to see if we can keep going. And I had my own room to myself finally. Because
ICU is that way, yeah.
But it was great because, like, having a partner, like a roommate during those times was really hard because it was just they had issues, I had issues, I heard their issues, and I maybe it was good because it was a big distraction for me. Yeah. And but I don't know, but it was like hard to like pay attention to hearing myself. So as me and my family are going through the test, I'm still being told I'm not in the clear. I'm barely eligible. And I was like, oh my gosh, like being on this list, I never knew was going to be like hard. I thought like once you need a liver transplant, you would be on this list. But there is 100+ reasons why somebody can't get on that list. And that is as little as an infection of just having a cough to like your heart or many things. And I was just like praying through all that. Like I left it with me and God that time. Like I didn't feel like putting the pressure on anybody else or making anybody else feel like they had to guide me through this. Yeah. Because they were hurting. And I don't know if anybody has felt that, but when somebody else is hurting, I couldn't do it. And I did not expect them to help me power through this. Even though they did the best they could. And so I would pray with God all the time. I would talk to him and I'd be like, what do I do? What do I do with this? I'm not baptized. I was told once that I wouldn't be in heaven, but for some reason that didn't stay with me. Like he took that away from me. Like he made me feel loved. It's just the pressure, any pressure that I felt from anything that was said to me, even like I was going to go to hell, because at this point I was convinced that the demon was after me.
Like the devil's coming.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't know.
Testing your faith.
But it's like surrounding me because I'm dealing with a lot of hopeful and positive people. And I never really understood hope until that moment. That's weird. I know, but no one ever explained to me what hope was. I just thought hope was just like a natural thing. Like I hope I make it to school in time, or I hope that
When you're talking about, I hope I survive.
Yeah.
It's a whole different ballgame.
So there was one night, I can't miss this guy. I was still waiting to be on the list, and this guy ran up a bunch of stairs, but he didn't tell me until after he told me, but he ran up a bunch of stairs, and I was like, not hopeful. But I was hopeful and not hopeful. I had faith that God would be there. I just didn't know when. I didn't know how.
You didn't know what God was going to do.
I had no. And I didn't know. So I had to like let that go, because I can't let my emotions get the best of me, because that would distract, that would like eat me up, you know? And so I was learning that lesson too at the same time. Like, whoa, I cannot overthink this, because it's going to put me in a place where I don't feel comfortable.
Yeah.
Because those are ruminating thoughts that have been with me since I was a kid. And I don't want to ruminate through those thoughts. I don't know if they're true or not. And so this guy ran up and he said, "You're on the list." And I was like, it was like 2 months later, being in the hospital and in an ICU. And I was like, or it felt like 2 months. It was a long time though. And I was like, what? And I was like, and you're so excited for me to be on the list. No one has been this excited for me in my life.
There's hope.
And for me being on the transplant list, like I've had all these different kinds of energies that I felt. And he was just amazing. He gave me he was like a valid thing for me to continue, like good people.
Gave you joy.
Gave me
hope.
joy. Like he didn't care about being the doctor that couldn't promise anything almost.
Yeah.
So he said, your liver transplant's going to be the next day at 10 a.m. And I was like, what? Like, I was like, this is so fast. Like, I didn't know that it was going to be that fast. And that night I went to bed and I knew that I had to face that.
Mm-hmm.
Because the doctors came in and told me about all these scenarios that could happen.
Yeah.
Because they have to. They're very discouraging. It's like, how am I going to survive? How am I going to survive even after this transplant is going to happen? I didn't think of those things, because God's not really talking to me. I don't feel his presence, and I'm I just decided to give everything to him. Pretty sure I forgave everybody, set off my sins to him.
Just let it all go.
Let it all go. I gave myself to God. Told him that he could do whatever he needs to do with me on earth or in heaven. I did not know what that meant, but he still was just help me the best that you can to handle afterlife or what's gonna happen.
Whatever may come.
Whatever may come. And I slept that night. And I had more confidence that I was gonna make it. I felt stronger. And I even told my dad, don't forget about that iPhone you said you were gonna get me if I survived this. And it was subliminally me telling him I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
But I better get that iPhone.
Just giving him a hard time.
Yeah. So I knew in my heart, and everybody was like, wow, I cannot believe this girl. And I was like, God is in me. God is with me. And I went into surgery, and God gave me dreams and visions of how he was with me and right beside me. And it was I was still me, and he was right beside me, and I just felt you love me this much to be this close to me. I did it like everything else I do in life. I kind of just just go with however this like pans out, because I just felt like he was my father. I automatically obeyed him, but not like a strict father or anything like that. It was just very nice. And
there was just this immediate trust.
And there was a wall, and it was made out of wood and just some sticks, and they were intertwined together. And the best way I could say that it mirrored was probably that way back in the day, or how my mom built her house. And I was like, oh my God, this wall. And I asked him, I said, can I touch it? And he let me, and I touched it, and I can't. It's really hard to explain it. It's just, I felt love like the first time that I've never felt love in my life. And he was showing me how much he loved me, but everybody. That is so peaceful to know that everybody's loved. And then I let go, and I was like, what do I don't know how to say this.
Okay.
I asked him if I could stay, and I was like, I take it back.
Just kidding.
Just kidding. I really don't know why I should not ask that question, but right then I felt like he was like, I have control over everything. I have control over when you die. I have control over how you live. I know everything about you. I'm with you all the time. You should not be afraid. But he just gave me so much comfort, and I can't believe you're doing this for me. Or what's happening? I don't know what's gonna happen. And I said, well, this happened during COVID, and really, it's just an honest conversation. He's my best friend. He knows everything about me. He knows when I've done everything. So I'm like, you're my best friend, and you still love me. So I didn't feel like it was bad to ask him or tell him, or insinuate. I don't know how it's, but I was like, don't you know that everybody is mad down there, or angry? I think I said, don't you know that people are angry down there? I was like, and you want me to go back? But
I have to go back?
It wasn't like I was scared of people or anything like that.
It was so joyful.
It was so joyful. And I was like, well, this is how I felt. Isn't I was there, not in that joyful part, but it was joyful just having him there. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do whatever you say. And I came back, and, some things came to me, there was something spiritual happening outside of the world, and it was just affecting Earth. And I was like, we got to love each other. People can't live with regret. And I've never wanted to show people love so much because I need that too.
Yeah.
So, and I don't think he told me to anything. I'm no prophet or anything like that. It was not said,
Well, God just showed you peace.
Yes.
And showed you what it can be.
Yeah.
And you're excited about that. That's a good thing. You want to pursue that. That's what I'm hearing you say.
Yeah. And so when I came back, that's just, I started feeling people that were not saying that God was in them.
Mm.
Or like, why does God do bad things to good people? And how some of my best friends were like studying about other things, and I was like, why don't you just let it be? You're putting too much stress in it. Like, let it be. Like, if you want to learn, yeah, that's great, but I don't think you need to deny it so much. That like, be open to like,
Be open to what God is
or
doing in your life.
a lot of things, like, or the how you feel. Don't go off, because I know how I was. I went off of other people's idea. I didn't realize that I had to read the Bible myself.
Yeah.
I haven't read most of the Bible yet, but
you're getting there.
I'm getting there, and I did. I when I was back and I was going through like a really hard time. There's like, you're getting off medicines and medications, so God was not done with me.
No.
I was so confused and lost, and I was in such an altered state. Like, I understand paradigms, but my paradigm like did like a 360.
So the healing process from that had to be crazy.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to think of all the elements of
It's everything internal, that everything runs through the liver.
Yeah. And like, yes. Okay. So, yeah. So the first year you have to be very careful.
Yeah.
You have to do everything. It's like intense.
So you're healing, but you've had this experience of heaven. Yeah. I can't imagine how much confidence that gave you as you were healing. Like, it's all going to be okay.
Yeah. Well, for 2 years, like, it was like that. And I had gone and seeked help, and I had to figure out my own, that I was the key to my own finding myself. Because I had lost myself, and I had faith in God. There's no denying what, so I just didn't know when. And so, like, God, it's lifted. Lord, thank you. Because it's a dark place.
Yeah.
And it was like probably the darkest place that I had to go through again. But he was restoring me for the better, and I see it more clearly now. He wasn't done with me. He like erased like how I was conditioned in life.
Yeah.
I had to rethink my beliefs and not be as cynical or judgmental as I had. And I was like forced to, because I was...
Well, in John chapter 3, Jesus says you become a new creation. You have to be new. You have to be renewed. You have to be born of the Spirit. And so you experience that. And you've made the decision to be baptized. What was that all like? I know your whole life you've kind of just not been there. How did you come to that decision?
You guys needed volunteers for church. And I don't know if it was because you needed children's ministry or volunteers, but I had volunteered in the past. And there's more to that story, but I had volunteered, and I was like, I loved it, because I learned a lot more about the Bible through God's children. And
we teach the children about the Bible around here. That's a big deal.
And my relationship with God started there magically. And so, and I was like, wow, God, you're so good. Like, you're teaching me. You knew how to teach me. You knew how to make me feel comfortable about learning about the Bible when I was scared. And you taught me through your own children.
Yep.
Like, how unbelievable is that? So, like, that story was not really said to many people either.
Yeah.
And this is the first time I'm saying this story out loud, because I want to reach people.
Yeah.
And, like, let them know, like, not to be scared to tell their own stories or to seek God. I had to seek God. I feel like I had to seek God. I talk to him all the time. I'm like, what's this relationship? God, I'm hearing it everywhere because I don't feel it. And that's when our relationship started, was with the children. And back to where I was saying, baptism, I came to you because I was like, I'm not going to do this again. I'm going to ask the pastor if he's okay if I taught the kids and I wasn't baptized yet. I just wanted all my corners covered.
Yeah.
And I had to tell you about my transplant, and I told you about my experience, and I told you like where I was in my life, because I had to be honest, like let everything out, because I wanted like the church to trust me too.
Yeah.
Like, and I knew that I had to say and be bold about it and not be scared. So I told you, and you said, "Come on," and I was like, "Okay," and.
You love Jesus, come help out. That's all I've got.
Yeah, and I was like, Jesus is my savior, and and you did some things throughout that, like, I prayed for it, and like you did some things in your sermon, so like my trust in you kind of grew. I didn't really tell you those things, but I didn't want to boost your ego.
Thank you. Don't. It's a problem.
But that, to me, that was like between what God was speaking through you. And that he was listening to me. And so that was really validating. I've searched for churches.
Yeah.
And this was the most welcoming church that I've ever felt to be invited to.
That's awesome.
And not that they were bad. It's just, some people have to find the right church. And I just didn't know. And my parents went and met with my neighbor. They intrinsically kind of worked, or God worked this plan through them, because my parents wanted me to start going to church, but I'm stubborn. So like, I can't really hear it from my parents, because I will be like, you're not supposed to tell me this. I'm supposed to understand this on my own. But they asked Marianne to invite me, and she goes, of course. Oh my gosh, of course. And she invited me, and I told my parents, and they had to be honest with me, and they're like, oh my gosh, he did. We asked her to. And I was like, I'm just going to ignore that happen, because I'm still stubborn. And I was like, I'm going to go. And so she invited me. And I think it was like your second day or your third day.
Yeah. I wasn't here long when you showed up.
Yeah. And I was like, this is great. Because she was like, it's a new pastor. And I was like, this is great. Because I like new.
Yeah.
Everything in my life is new.
That's right. New liver, new life, new look on life, everything.
And I had told God I was going to read the word.
Yeah.
And I did try to find out ways to do it online, but it really, I had to have a church and somebody to be relatable in like the stories that they said. And I think you reach a lot of people. That's why I wish, and I ask people to come to church with me, because there's a lot of different things that people need to experience. And I just wanted them to experience how this church.
Well, everything I've learned about talking about the Bible, I learned from a lot of other people who helped me. So I've had a lot of people teach me a lot of things. I mean, I can't claim that to be my own. I learned from my dad, my grandfather, and a lot of other clergy colleagues who have just taught me a lot. And, it's really all because of them that I can do anything well. I don't think I'm as good as I need to be. I don't think I've arrived or anything like that. But what I hope in our church, and this is what I've experienced since I was here, like I want that welcoming environment. And I'm not able to create that. That's the people of the church. I want the music and worship to be great. I can't create that. I can barely carry a tune in a bucket. But Jamel and the choir and the band, they do incredible things and make worship come alive. And there's so much that happens that makes it easy for me to get up there and start talking, because everybody's already excited. But I can tell you, like, it's just a movement of the Spirit here. Because I can tell you all my sermons aren't good, but every Sunday's been good. Not just because of me, but because of what God's doing here. And this Sunday, you're getting baptized in the Gulf of Mexico.
Yes.
We're going to have fun.
We didn't talk about like, when I was journeying into the baptism, I was like, thinking about how God came to me. And I was like, I still don't feel like, I still feel like I'm missing something.
Oh, man.
And because I was still like, not feeling like myself. And the only thing I really wanted was to feel like myself again.
Yeah.
And it comes and goes. But like ever since I really delved into the baptism part, I had to start listening to things. Like, so for some reason, I went on your podcast and your YouTube pages because I started following you guys on Facebook, and I was like, all these videos kept popping up. And even when it pops up on your screen to remind you, oh, there's a new video on YouTube on
we work Nathan to death around here.
And I saw one about baptism. And I was like, oh my gosh, I do not want this to push me away.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I'm going to listen to it. God knows that I do not like to be pressured into anything. I don't. And I want it to come with love and natural, how I feel. And I listened to it, and I loved how you guys talked about the Trinity, because I'm still confused a little bit.
It's a holy mystery.
It's a holy mystery. And I loved how you used the words like very powerful with the gentle spirit. And I don't know who you guys were talking about, but it made me think of.
So there's a prophet in the Old Testament where God's voice is found. He's hiding in a cave. He's trying to hide from God. And there's this torrent of fire and wind and water and all this stuff that goes by. And none of that's God. But then there's this calm, gentle voice. And that's the voice of God. And that's what speaks to him. It's not this overwhelming force, but it's just this calm, gentle, loving spirit. And I think that that's how we're supposed to be. It's those calm, gentle, loving spirits of one another. And so part of why I don't pressure people to be baptized, I invite them, but I don't pressure anyone, is I think it's your choice. It's up to you. It's between you and God.
You said it like, this is I want everybody to know this is I choose to walk with Jesus. I choose to walk.
It's a choice.
It's a choice. And I want the world to know that I've always had faith, but I'm making a choice.
To publicly say where I stand. I'm one of Jesus's.
Yes.
That's
exactly
who I am.
Like you said. Publicly say where I stand, and as I preach, as I
you can preach, it's good.
Speak of the word. I feel like it also makes me more comfortable. I think the Spirit is more in me. When I started talking about baptism to myself, and I can't wait because I hear all these glorifying things, even though I feel like ultimately glorified, I do need guidance.
Yeah.
And if the Holy Spirit helps with guidance,
it does. It's the advocate, the one that guides us.
I am more than joyful to be a part of this new me and the ongoing of things that happen in my life.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Because it's a big deal. And it is incredibly hard to talk about ourselves. I get it. And, I normally edit all my stories to not feel what you've had to walk through. So thank you for your courage, because it's hard to talk about ourselves. But let's pray. Okay. Gracious God, thank you for Lisa's story. Thank you for all she has shared today. Thank you for her willingness to step forward and decide to publicly declare that she is yours and that she's on your side, that she's going to be your love in the world. We ask that you bless us, that you give us strength to continue to serve you and to be your people each and every day. We ask this in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.